Okay, welcome to Whiteboard Wednesday, week 15. I'm in a different room, as you can probably see, and this is actually the match committee room now at AAMI Park. And I'm going to give a little bit of a talk today about facilities and just how important this particular stage is for it. We've had a few people ask, when we're going to officially launch, when we're going to make announcements, and you can probably even see, and I'll get Matt just to pan around a little bit. We've still got a few whiteboards still to be attached and a few other things which are still to happen here, but I can assure you this is a very, very big step up from the vault, where basically we've been selecting teams for the previous few years. And the vault, for those who don't know, is a demountable which was down at the Junction Oval, which had 3 air conditioners in it, but you could only put 2 on at any one time, because the minute the third one went on, the power board would explode. So that was basically the conditions of which we've been operating in for a large period of time. This is now a meeting room which will be used obviously for picking the team, and this is hence this particular whiteboard, which is really cool, where you get to lock it down at the end of the day after the guys and their various considerations and consternations and all those sorts of stuff all get a bit of a run, but they'll be able to pick the team properly. In regard to where this actually sits and what it actually means for us, I thought I'd start with a little bit of a history lesson from the outset. Firstly, it was up until 1965, and I'll refer to 1965 a lot when I talk about our footy club, because it's almost in American baseball folklore they talk about the curse of the Bambino, but in Melbourne Footy Club it should be the curse of 1965, because there was 3 significant things actually happened in and around that time. Firstly, Norm Smith was sacked, obviously reinstated, but it was also the year before was the last time the club made the finals for 23 years, and obviously were premiers in 1964. Ron Barassi went to Carlton, and we lost our great identity and our great person in regard to that, who then went on and obviously coached premierships at Carlton and North Melbourne. And the other thing which happened is that Richmond also came to the MCG, and Richmond hadn't won a premiership since 1943, and were actually to win one 2 years later in 1967 and have a success era for the next however many years. And since that period of time, obviously, 1964 being the last year that the Demons actually won a premiership, we've played in a couple of grand finals, but realistically haven't been able to have any real sustained success. But the other thing which happened, and people can refer about these other points in history, I'll talk about this one in particular, because that was the day that Melbourne's usage of the MCG basically changed. Up until that time, we pretty well had the MCG to ourselves. We played all our games there. We were the only team playing there other than during the final series. We were also, it was at a time when we were able to socialise in and around the ground, where our membership was very much tied to the membership in the MCC, and there's famous stories about the dances and the socialisation which happened around the place, the bullring bar, all these types of things. Actually, in fact, when the team won the 1964 premiership, the cup actually came back to the bullring bar and the members of at the MCG and Melbourne Cricket Club. We obviously trained there. There were some issues in and around the training because it was also a cricket ground, obviously, so you didn't get full access, but in those days you only started training around February anyway, so it was just for a few weeks prior to the start of the season. But everything, and we also had our administration there. Administration in those days was probably a single office for Jimmy Cardwell and a boardroom somewhere, we probably shared with the Melbourne Cricket Club, but basically everything could centre in and around the MCG. But since that time, a lot's changed. And it probably reached its peak of change when, and I was involved in the club around this time, that other teams, went from Richmond, and then other clubs started playing there. North Melbourne started playing their home games there, and Collingwood, then they started bringing matches of the round there. Games were played on Saturdays and Sundays, and then we had Friday nights with the Kangaroos. There was a whole lot of things starting to happen, and so therefore the traditional ways of which we maintain grounds, and the ground was becoming a showpiece in itself. So therefore the teams themselves, the quality of the ground became very, very important, and people weren't accepting of just playing in the mud and the slop as perhaps we were in the generations before. But also the bringing together of making sure we were making the most of this unbelievable venue at the MCG was really important. So it was around, and then what happened in 1985, all of that reached a bit of a head when the club was trying to train at the MCG. And you'd go out, our players would go out on the ground, and the wicket would be all roped off, and there'd be parts of the ground which would be under repair, and they used to have the old practice wickets in those days in front of the southern stand. So all of a sudden our guys, their training was being compromised in and around that, and it got to the point where the footy club and the cricket club, who'd separated out 5 years before, made the decision that the football training would have to go elsewhere. And it was basically only for a training venue at that stage. The administration was still based at Jollymont Terrace. And so in 1985, and it was done as a temporary basis, we started training at the Junction Oval.